being that you're living your life and you are who you are, you have your significant other who is who she is. Do you ever at night and when you're alone or in a space ever feel like you're speaking and things are hurting her?
Yes. Yes.
How do you feel? Like, what does that do
to you? It took her to tell me that. I didn't know. Because you got to understand, too, that people have to give other people grace because those aren't prerequisites of understanding for most men. And I always say this about men. Men don't register things the same way females do. Meaning, I don't know how that make you feel. I know. If you ask me a question, would you hit? Yeah, I hit. But you're standing next to your woman. And how does that make her feel? I don't consider those things. I'm not used to. But
now that's really interesting that Cam Newton's just exposed that. I want to say this first and foremost, it's not that Cam Newton is a bad guy. It's not like Cam Newton is the worst kind of person in a relationship. Cam Newton is a complex person who should be made simple because he's got an attachment style that forces him into a space of being dismissive about emotional things. That's why he said at the very end that he hurt Jasmine, but at the same time, if they ask him a question about whether he wants to hit another woman and it's in front of Jasmine, he might not say anything. He might say something because he's not registering that it would emotionally hurt her. Now, that's really interesting because he told us already that he grew up in a household where he saw a healthy marriage between his mom and dad. So why would they have not taught you emotional intelligence, be able to spot the fact that saying something about wanting to sleep with somebody else whilst you have a girl is going to cause issues? Oh, it's because you're not telling us the full truth about what you experienced in your actual parents' marriage, and therefore you're a very dismissive character. Or he could just be a supervillain and he's intellectualizing and using therapy to kind of like, swoon us over. That could be also true as well. I'm going to take it from an attachment perspective, okay? Because I believe that Jasmine is someone who's anxious, who always seeks to externalize her validation through external relationships, i.e. Cam Newton. And so that's why this relationship has gone on as long as it has, and why she also carteled her needs and literally bucked her own message about women like her right now who choose men like Cam Newton and become a baby mother, and in a situation where it's not necessarily the greatest, right? But let's focus on Cam Newton specifically. We just heard him say that he had hurt Jasmine and he did not realize until she said that she had been hurt. And also the fact that he couldn't grasp the idea that, answering a question about, wanting to sleep with somebody would hurt her. How would he not know? Well, because when you are so dismissive of your own emotional needs, you tend to dismiss the emotional needs of other people. He has an emotional blind spot. Now, we already know he struggles with commitment, but now we also know he struggles with emotional blind spots. He doesn't realize how his dismissiveness is contributing towards the downfall of his relationships, right? And so all these women that have encountered him have probably thought to themselves they could change him, they can make him better, they can improve him. Why? Because Cam Newton talks a great game. Right? He tells you about how, I didn't know that at times. So now I know it. Okay, I'm improving here. I'm getting better here. Yet he's still making similar choices because we've got 3 baby mothers. Okay, and Jasmine's the 3rd baby mother who seemingly seems more healthy in their relationship, but there's no ring, there's no marriage, there's no mention of it, but there is family. And she is looking after all the, seemingly, she looks like she's involved in the hands-on with the mother situation on that. That's another story for another day. Okay, so Cam Newton's dismissive avoidant patterns, and I believe Jasmine's anxious attachment response is how this emotional dynamic keeps on going and how they're going to be trapped in a cycle of hope, hurt, and delayed accountability, or rather accountability with delayed changes in action. Now, I believe there is something to learn from this. So if you're somebody who identifies with a dismissive avoidant aspect and people have told you, oh, sometimes you don't consider the impact on other people, yeah, probably is a video for you today. Okay, let's break this down. Let's get into this. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on that wonderful bell button, and click on the notifications of the uploads. If you're somebody who's going through attachment issues or you've been studying it and you want some coaching, I am your man. But please first book in a 30-minute free discovery call to make sure I'm the right kind of coach for you going forward, so we know your expectations and your goals and see if we can match that in our coaching. But let's get into this because I want to break this down for you and hopefully bring you some understanding of what's been happening to you potentially and what happened to Cam Newton. First and foremost, we've got to just be honest, okay? We know already that Cam Newton is an aware individual. He's aware, but he's unable to integrate his own particular behaviors. He's aware of what he does. As you clearly heard in here, look how very honest and aware he was of the fact that he has caused pain for Jasmine in the relationship.
Hurting her.
Yes.
How do you feel? Like, what does that do
to you? It took her to tell me that. I didn't know. Because you got to understand, too, that people have to give other people grace because those aren't prerequisites of understanding for most men. And I always say that.
Now, I don't think that's actually right. When he says it's not prerequisite for most men, I don't think that's true. I think that's true for a lot of men, but not necessarily the majority of men. There, I think this aspect, he's got a narrow worldview, which again goes according to the people that's probably around him who are confirmationally biased in responding to the way that he views the world. But there's also, I can admit myself, at a younger age, I was a very dismissive person, but I understand what my background was. It's very in alignment with what his one is, two-parent household, and it looks like it's good until you start really deep in that your emotional needs were never met. And so actually now you're having to do the work. And I think for Cam Newton, while I don't think he's necessarily the baddest guy out there, he's doing damage. Okay, so the fact that, first, number one is that there's awareness without any integration, right? It's very difficult. Of course, there's changes, but it's very slow, and that's actually what the promise is. The promise is he's going to change, but will that promise of change and slow changes over time actually be able to be outlasted by Jasmine's patience, or will Jasmine's patience snap before he fully changes? That's the question she has to ask herself. Right. So we can see here, though, there is emotional blindness in terms of needing to be told the emotional aspects of a relationship and how he can hurt someone. OK, now I want to be clear for him. Maybe if Jasmine was to answer a question like she would have sex with somebody else in front of him, he might be cool with it. Right. And that would be a fair result. That would mean that there's some fairness across the board. I'm going to be honest. I don't know how honest. I don't know how happy he would be with Jasmine saying that in public and saying, she would, have sex with somebody else whilst he's standing there. You know what I mean? So that lack of understanding is a little bit some way, right? But that comes back down to that dismissiveness where you take the emotions out of situations and events, because that's not how you're necessarily wired. You're used to suppressing and repressing your feelings. And it's really important to understand that it shows up in this way because of the fact that you've experienced in your household emotional neglect. Your parents have neglected you and neglected your emotional needs. So you've learned to depend on yourself only. When you depend on yourself only, what tends to happen is you tend to tune out what emotional needs other people have. It can be very frustrating. So you've got to tell. And here's the big thing. Funny enough, dismissive avoidance can change these things, but it has to be told these things, which is what he was actually saying. Right? You have to be told so that you know not to do that anymore. And it can change. My thing is, though, is that some of these things, are probably going to cause you a lot of pain before you get to that stage. And so it's not always that it's intentionally trying to be cruel. It's just an inability to actually understand this particular way of moving, because dismissive avoidance don't move on an emotional plane. And that's what can be very, very difficult.
This about men. Men don't register things the same way females do. Meaning, I don't know how that make you feel. I know if you ask me a question, would you hit? Yeah, I hit. But you're standing next to your woman. Mm-hmm. And how does that make her feel? I don't consider those things. I'm not used to. But now it's like, would you hit?
Do you see, I don't even get into that.
What man would not think about the fact that if they answer a question about would you hit with another girl, with a girl in a room or around them, they would feel some type of way about it? What person wouldn't think that?
But the attack on your significant other now, the type of attack that she goes through every day, you got tears in my eyes. That type of attack is the type of attack, that I've gone through in different things. And to me, she's like a pretty amazing woman. Oh. And being in the media, you're never going to be right. They're going to attack you for anything, good or bad. But the type of attack that your significant other gets, I feel is very unfair.
And it's in large part self-inflicted.
What you mean?
Meaning inside the household. I bring these attacks to her. She used the words, not me. She said, baby, I feel like a piñata. And you're setting me up.
Oh.
So with that, I needed her to tell me that. It never and this is the thing too. My first baby mama didn't tell me that because she probably didn't know how. Yeah. But that does not mean that she didn't feel the same. Mm-hmm. My second baby mama didn't tell me that because she probably didn't know how. Mm-hmm. And now, as we're going through things, and this is why I always tell females, and I'm grateful that we're having this conversation and you're asking me these questions, because even as strong as I am, even as successful and how much money, I still need help. Help meaning, you got to tell me, babe. I don't know how this is affecting. No.
Now, the key question is this. How much at what point does a woman have to spend being an emotional rehabilitation center for a man? I'm just being honest with you. you're going to experience a lot of pain in between that time before he begins to rehabilitate to the right place. And so what we're seeing right now is how Jasmine has become the fall guy for him. Right now, the trouble is that she might see some investment because she might see the return on investment, the ROI, because Cam is actually changing in some aspects. The key thing is, though, is he going to change enough in time to make you happy? Or will you break down before you get to that place? Now, for obviously dismissive avoidance, right? One of the key things that are also happening is that, and I'm going to get to a clip in a second where he's going to mention about not caring about people's image. I'll get there in a second. But this part here, he tells us quite clearly that, you know what, the baby mother probably had the same situation, probably didn't tell him, and you know he wasn't aware. It's not until Jasmine told him that he then changed that aspect. Again, this may seem like he's changing, and so Jasmine might feel like, wow, this man's changing for me. He's being different. He's actually listening to me, and it presents a false illusion that you actually have more power over him than you really think. But that's not a story for another day. But for Cam Newton, okay, as you notice, he's very direct and very straight. But that doesn't mean that with self-awareness that he's able to integrate what he needs to change. Like, he grew up in a 2-parent household, and he knew that. If you watch my other videos, he knew that, but he still rebelled. Just because he's able to talk a good game in terms of intellectualizing what he's feeling does not mean that he's not doing the wrong things. And does not mean that also that he can change his behaviors, because he may not know the know-how, which is why he's asking the woman, you got to tell me, because he's not able to change certain things without you pointing out his emotional blind spots.
For sure. And sometimes women lead with, you know, you're supposed to lead.
Mhm.
And that could be like, hold on, but I still need you to give me insight so I can lead us, right?
Mhm.
And we have these conversations. That's what I'm saying. I'm an open book.
So I didn't know how you were going to be like in a conversation, because I'm going on his show, and one thing I've made a living off of singing the thoughts.
I want to go a bit further on. Hold on. I want to go a bit further on because I want to just skip some part here because I know they're going to
Like
talk.
you're doing, is going to talk. He's not going to, be offended. He's going to just have a 100 conversation. So if I'm sitting here, we're supposed to have a full
No, for sure.
100% conversation. And people like your significant other. They liked her before y'all have become a couple.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
And some things that she has said, might have offended women in other ways, like, and now they're like, oh, so now you're in this situation that you made fun about.
Right. And now all of it.
And the truth of the matter is, that's on Jasmine. And we'll do a part 2 to this as well. That's on Jasmine. Jasmine has to take accountability for the fact that her attachment style of being an anxious person has allowed her to be in a space where she feels like she has more control than she actually does, where she overgives in order to reel in somebody else to make her feel validated. Because there ain't no way that you are preaching this story and then you end up in the same situation, and we're sticking to it. So in that space, there's probably shame, there's probably embarrassment, there's probably fear, there's probably a lot of that happening for her. And that's why she stayed in the situation as she has. And then she tried to make the best out of it by clowning other people, talking about, if you never felt no rich man's pressure. No, sis, darling, you gave up your needs in order to receive financial security. Because it certainly isn't emotional, because this brother just told us that he didn't even know that saying certain things would emotionally hurt her, right? Which I think we all would know in that space. But listen to this.
You done switched up.
Yeah, you done switched up, but I'm telling you, something called being dick drunk. That dick. Oh, hallelujah, that dick. It will make you see things differently, do things differently, and just love in general. Yeah. So what I want to do with you today is have up a real, not like it looks good for me.
Sure, I'm grown, like, yo, and they met without me being there. Like, it was one of them situations like, hey, boom, you in Miami, y'all cool, boom. And that's where a lot of people don't understand my dynamic.
There's a part one to play.
Love. But nowadays, what we're waiting the thoughts
in real time
and the true feelings of women. That is how, And
can I be honest too?
Yes.
My team did a subject analysis.
Okay.
Of Cam Newton.
Okay, so I want you to listen to this part. It's the last part we're gonna just touch on. Now, he says obviously they did an analysis of him. Why? Listen to his reasoning as to why he did an analysis of himself. I listen to what he says about himself.
And I was genuinely curious to what people thought. Not that I care. I was just curious. And
I don't. Well, hold on. I don't care, but I'm genuinely curious about what people think. So you do care, because if you didn't care, why would you go and do a search? Right? You don't care. You just got on with what you need to get on with. Listen to the contradictory statement. There's a reason why he's contradicted himself. Listen to this.
Do not have support from women bothers me.
You don't have that.
Yeah.
I'll be honest. We're gonna be 100.
Yeah,
You do not have that. Women are so mad and so.
Now, my thing is, why would you care whether women support you or not? You know what I'm saying to you? Why would you care about that? Why would you care if they support you or not? The reality is because he cares, and because he's willing to suppress his actual feelings in terms of how he feels about certain subjects. But the reality is, it comes out because his actions that he takes. He said he doesn't care, right? But and that's to show that he's strong, he's in control. You know, he is somebody who is tall and strong and you know, dependable, right? And is somebody who is fortified. But the reality is, he did that to get some level of validation, without being fully disclosing with vulnerability. Okay, and so in that space, right? In that space, he is now having to contradict the fact that he felt no way about it. And then I think the final point I want to even focus on as well as a dismissal avoidant is that he said, obviously, I talked about leadership and spoke about how he believes that men should lead, which I agree with. And he admits that he needs a little bit of help in that department, which is cool. And so what he's honestly being honest about is that dismissal avoidant struggle sometimes, you know, being in a place of leadership, because we do, as an individual, I notice myself, we struggle with being emotionally tuned in with people for long periods of time. We struggle with responsibility when we have to cater to somebody else's needs for long periods of time because we feel like you should be independent, and self-sacrificing for long-term emotional safety can be very difficult for dismissal avoidance, because it's like, why am I sacrificing for you so that you can have the emotional safety, but I'm not feeling safe myself? And these are very difficult when you haven't practiced these things for you. Now, I'll do a part 2 probably later on in the week when I talk about Jasmine's role in this. So I want to make it very clear, if you're somebody who is a dismissive avoidant, you might identify with a lot of the things that he just did here, right? The dismissiveness, the lack of understanding of why people emotionally get hurt by some of the things that people say, you being a straight shooter and somebody who's always telling the truth, but not realizing the impact you're making on somebody. All of that is a part of the emotional attunement and emotional sensitivity in that space as well. But we're going to break down some more of this as well. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification of uploads. We appreciate you. Stay locked, stay low. We'll see you again soon. Much